Hello and a big welcome to the man who I'm a little starstruck by right now, I have to tell you, but he's made me feel at ease in our pre-record conversation. Lawrence Lepard, commonly known as Larry Lepard, welcome aboard to Bitcoin People.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here, Carrie. The whole notion of you being starstruck is kind of odd to me because I'm just a regular guy, kind of a squirrel looking for a nut, you know?
But to me, you're Brad Pitt. So,
Oh boy, I got to tell my wife that.
I even want to tell you that I dressed up just for you, but I'm actually I'm actually shooting out, dare I say, to a client meeting afterwards. So I'm
Yeah,
dressed
there
up
you go.
more than usual. Larry, you are very well known, not just in the Bitcoin community, but you do a lot of mainstream media. You're known as a gold guy, a sound money guy. How did you come to be that? Who is the real Larry Lepard? How did you end up being you?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background, maybe give you some clues. I was raised in the Midwestern part of the United States in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. One side of my family, my grandfather and grandmother on my father's side of my family were very deeply religious. She was Mennonite, very, very spiritual person. And I really admired her and kind of picked up that spiritual side of her life.
Can
And
I just, I hate to interrupt, but can you just explain a little bit about Mennonite to
yeah,
me?
it was kind of an offshoot of the Quaker movement. There's the Quakers came through Pennsylvania, and the Mennonites were part of the Quakers. It was like a spin-off of it all, and they were very, very kind of fundamentalist, religious group. And they still kind of exist. They got absorbed into some of the other churches as well, but it was basically Christian, but with a pretty hardcore view on kind of right and wrong. So I grew up in the Midwest, and I was in a small business family. My parents, my father and his father had retailing operations in the area. So they were kind of shopkeepers, really.
Okay. What
Yeah.
kind of retail? What kind of
Well, the
shop?
biggest, I mean, a bunch of different things, but probably the most notable one was furniture. They
Oh,
had kind of a
great.
couple of the leading furniture stores, and so which had grown out of my great grandfather's working in a furniture mill in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he was making hardwood furniture, because originally a lot of the hardwood furniture came from Michigan before a lot of the trees went away and now moved to the Carolinas. But and then he figured out that people in the eastern part of the state needed this furniture, and so he put a bunch of it on a trailer. This was 1800s. Drove it over to the eastern part of the state and sold it, rather than letting the company who was making it put it on a train and sell it out east. And then he was smart enough to realize that Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan, had just been established, and he was smart enough to realize that going to college was something that was going to continue and grow. And so he went to Ann Arbor and he bought a house, and he started selling furniture out of his house, and that ultimately became a furniture business. And the leading furniture store in Ann Arbor is 40,000 square feet, and he really benefited. And then, of course, he was smart enough, with all the money he would make, he would buy the land right around the university, because he could see that the university was going to grow. And then the university would come and say, we need that land, and they'd pay him a lot more than he bought it for. So he was kind of a smart old guy. And that was kind of my family background. And we were kind of dime store millionaires, because having some retail furniture businesses in Ann Arbor is no great shakes when you compare it to the big money center banks and all the people that are doing huge industry. But by Ann Arbor standards, we were extremely comfortable. We weren't missing any meals, and we were kind of considered to be solid upper middle class family. So I was very lucky to grow up in that environment and grow up learning the lessons of my father and my grandfather. And I went to high school, and was into sports, particularly running and swimming. I was better on cardio than I was on getting hit. I played football for 1 year. I didn't like getting hit. And then I went off to college and studied economics. I was thinking of going to engine school, because I really like tearing things apart. I mean, if you kind of look at who I am, I think my highest and best use is analyzing stuff. I like to figure out how things work. I mean, I was the kid who took apart the lawnmower to figure out why it worked the way it did, or the car or anything else. And so thought about being an engineer, but thought, nah, I probably should get a higher degree beyond engineering. So I went to liberal arts school. And then I went to my father. I said, hey, I'm going to come back and help you sell furniture and run these retail operations you've got. And he said, no, you're not. And I said, why not? And he said, because you're too smart to do this. And I said, well, I don't know about that. And he said, if I were your age, this was 71 when I was going into high school. 75, I got out of high school. He said, if I were your age, I'd get involved with computers. You know, the microchip had just been invented. Intel was just starting to come around. He gave me a book on computers and so forth, Micro Millennium, and that stuck with me. And I was kind of like, you know what? He said, look, Larry, every industry grows and then it dies. I mean, you have to remember at the time, it was interesting because Ann Arbor and Detroit was kind of like the Silicon Valley of its day. I mean, post World War II, you know, the entire world was in shambles, and you know, there were no computers or microchips. And between 1946 and 1975, Detroit basically put the entire country on wheels and gave everybody two cars. And so kind of a lot of the richest people and a lot of the biggest industry was in the Detroit area. And we benefited from that. I mean, I had the president of Ford Motor Company live down the street from me, and all the kids who parents were execs in all the auto companies, lived in Ann Arbor and Dearborn and the nearby towns. And so it was really a positive and great place to live. And by the way, Detroit had also helped to win World War II. I mean, they created, the Willow Run Bomber Factory, which is a couple of miles from my house. They were putting out a bomber, a B-24 bomber every hour by the end of the war. And so, great book on this called The Arsenal of Democracy. It talks about how basically Detroit helped, America win World War II. I mean, it created, they built more shit in less time than had ever been done in history. So it was a really fun and great place to grow up. But I went off to school, and I realized I wanted to get involved in something that was technical and that involved analysis, because that's what I enjoyed doing. And that led me into finance. And so I went to Wall Street after college, and I worked in the M&A department of Wall Street Investment Bank. And I saw what that was all about. And I was kind of appalled by the ethics, to be frank.
I was going to ask exactly that.
Yeah, but all the same, I thought that investing in companies and stocks and all of that was extremely interesting to me. So I applied and I got into Harvard Business School. I went there, and I'd read some articles on Warren Buffett, and I'd focused on investing, and I focused on the fact that investing involved analysis, which I loved doing, just loved doing. I do it in my spare time. I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a great investor. That's what I want to be. And I mapped that against what my father had told me, which is get into computers. And I got into the venture capital business, because venture capitalists, and there were very few of them back then, and there was Kleiner Perkins and Greylock and a few others. I wrote them all. I wrote 400 letters to venture capitalists, 399 turndowns. I got one job at a bank in Chicago, which is where I started out. It was the Continental Illinois Bank. The bank failed, and then I went and got a job with another group that remembered me from the letter campaign. But these venture capital guys were investing in technology, and you could see what technology was doing. The IBM PC was introduced in 1981. And in my second year at Harvard Business School, Mitch Kapor came over, and he had an Apple II, and he had Lotus 123 on it. And he said, this is a spreadsheet. I just put these numbers in these cells, and I hit the sum button, and they add up. And I was just blown away, because I just spent 2 years down on Wall Street writing out numbers on green legal pads, taking them to a statistical typist, then taking them to a print shop, then having them reduced in size and printed up so that I could make a blue book, so that the partner could go hop on his Learjet and fly to the corporate headquarters and make a presentation. So anyway, I got in the venture business, and I did that for a long time. I did that from 1983 until 2003 with two different companies. One, Summit Partners, I was partner number 4 there. It went on to become I made them a lot of money. I didn't see much of it, and that's the kind of people they were. I left after 7 years because of their ethics. I couldn't bear being there. And guys I hired, have, enormous net worths, hundreds of millions of dollars in net worth. But I thought the business was a fraudulent business model. They were taking advantage of the investors in a huge way. And so I went to another venture firm, which was much smaller, and we did extremely well. We had a fund where we took about $30 million and turned it into 150. And that was mostly with technology companies. And the better part of that was when we caught up with the internet thing in 1993. I was at a meeting, and a guy said, well, I'll send that data to me on my internet address. I said, what's an internet address? He said, well, it's this thing on CompuServe, it's dial up, and you have Novell, right? And I said, yeah, we have Novell, which was email inside an office. Young people won't know what this is, but I said, yeah, we have that. Said, imagine if you had Novell for the entire world. You could send email to anywhere in the world instantly. I was like, oh, that's friggin' powerful. So I went back to my office. I had a bunch of kids working for me. I said, we've got to find every single company we can in the internet and invest in it. First of all, I said, we got to find out where the internet is. And that, of course, that just shows how stupid I was. I didn't, there must be an internet building somewhere hanging out, right? And of course there wasn't. And then oh, okay, I get it. It's a protocol. It's got all these computers talking to one another. We got a CompuServe address, blah, blah, blah. So I went and I bought every single internet company that was private that I could between 1993 and 95. And we had the first public internet offering in 1995, before Netscape, even, with Netcom, which was an internet service provider. What they were doing was they were doing the dial-up model, where you plug a phone into a modem. Again, a lot of young people listening won't remember that, but the internet was in the early days extremely clunky, as those of us who were there know. But we made a ton of money in that run, and betting on good small companies that got very big. And we also made some mistakes. By the end of it, 1999, 2000 was really nutty because of all the bailouts they'd done with LTCM in 1998. And we had a group of people came to us and said, your last fund did so well, we want to give you $400 million for your next fund. The only condition is that you've got to invest it in the internet. My partner and I looked at each other and we said, that's a stupid idea because it's way overvalued right now. We know it's going to continue, but we can't see what the next leg of it all is. And so we said, well, we're not comfortable taking that 400 million, which, no venture capitalist ever turned down a fund, but we did. And we were helped by the fact that we had two guys working for us who were Harvard Business School grads. They'd been with us 2 years, and they looked at my partner and I, and they said, yeah, we've been here a couple of years now, and you guys really are kind of fossils. You don't know what you're doing. If you're going to raise this next fund, we're not going to hang around unless you give us over half the fund. And my partner and I, we looked at each other and we said, really? Okay, we're not going to raise the fund. Here's the $400 million back, and you guys are fired. So I've been somewhat unconventional, and I left a lot of money on the table there, but I didn't care because it was the right thing to do. So I retired in 2003, and my family wanted to be back in the Boston area. I was in the New York area at the time and living in New Jersey and working in Fort Lee. I wanted to be back in the Boston area, so we moved back up to Boston, and I started managing my own money. And the numbers were big enough that, if I was somewhat intelligent, I should have been able to take that capital and stretch it out for the rest of my life. However, in 2008, the great financial crisis hit, and Ben Bernanke tested his theory of not allowing deflation to occur and took the Fed balance sheet from 800 billion to 4 trillion, over the space of 2 or 3 years. And at that point in time, I realized, it hit me like a ton of bricks, that they were going to destroy the currency. And that even though I had X million dollars, that wasn't going to be enough to allow me to make it to my planned target of 100 years old in financial comfort. And I'd also kind of during that time frame watched my father's relatively, modest but significant net worth decrease in purchasing power as a result of all the inflation. So what I did was I pivoted, and I went into the sound money trade. And I'd always been a sound money advocate. My grandfather was a gold bug. I'd read all the Austrians. I got a D in macro in college from a guy who was a Keynesian, and he and I used to argue a great deal. And it was like the only bad grade I got in college. It really pissed me off, kind of ruined I would have had like a perfect 4.0 in econ. But anyway, I basically pivoted and went into what at the time was the only form of sound money that I was aware of, although Bitcoin had just been invented. I wasn't aware of it. And that is gold and gold and silver miners. And so I found a guy who was doing a good job in that area. I gave him some money. He taught me the business. He's a neat old school guy named Walter Cabot. He's part of the Cabot Lodge family up here in Boston. And we went out and we started picking gold miners, and I've been doing that ever since. And they work extremely well during certain periods of time. They don't work well when the price of gold is falling. And I discovered that from 2011 to 2015. It was a blessing in disguise because I was fat and dumb and lazy, and I realized that if I didn't get my ass in shape, I wasn't going to make it to 95. So I did a lot of research on how to get in shape, and that led me into CrossFit, and I dropped 30 pounds, and now I'm kind of an exercise freak. So all for the good, though, because I want to be around for a long time.
I thought you'd been a runner most of your life, no?
Well, I had been, but I let it go. I did it in high school and college, and it's too easy to let it go. And long, slow cardio actually is not as good a solution as HIIT training for staying really, really in good shape. So, and this all mapped against my, grandmother's, Mennonite religious views of kind of, the power structure and the unfairness of the world as a result of the people in New York and Washington pulling all the strings. you know, and she was always very skeptical of, you know, me going to Harvard. And she had an inherent sense that the people in a lot of the positions of power in the country were abusing that power, even, you know, back in that day. I mean, as an example, you know, Roosevelt grabbed all the gold in 33, and I'm pretty sure, I've never asked my grandfather, I wish I had before he passed, but I'm pretty sure he did not comply with that demand. But
Good
you know,
for him.
yeah, but think about it at the time. I mean, that was a pretty serious thing. I mean, basically the government just said, we're going to grab your wealth,
Yep.
you know, and you know, what's that all about? So I've really been an advocate for sound money throughout my whole career, but I guess radicalized since '08. And you know, to me, it's not just about the money and the profits. In fact, it's very little about the money and the profits. It's very much about honesty, fairness, and a level playing field. You know, what really frustrates me and angers me and causes me to be in this fight is the notion that, you know, some people who are quite wealthy, and I don't begrudge them their wealth if it had been honestly earned, but some people who are quite wealthy and quite powerful have really tipped the playing field in their favor and against the average common working person. And it has caused just enormous, enormous pain to generations of people in this country. You know, the Midwest being hollowed out with all the opioids, the way that all this stuff went offshore, you know, just, I mean, the damage it did to my grandfather's business. I mean, my grandmother on her deathbed, you know, was having those kind of the delirium tremors when you're dying. And she was saying, they don't have any debt. They don't have any debt. And that's because from 1930 to 1939, my grandmother and grandfather basically, you know, walked their proceeds down to the banker and begged the bank not to foreclose on their business. And that was all because in 28, you know, he expanded it because the economy was booming, and that's what the signal said to do, right? And that was all because of what the Federal Reserve did. And they created so much money and created an enormous boom, and then they did the rug pull. And and you know, think of the people that were damaged to that. Think of the people that were damaged in '08, all the people who lost their houses. I mean, my sister lost her house in '08. You know, this constant mismanagement of the money and the money supply and the dishonest, you know, system that we've got has just caused enormous, enormous pain to, you know, people throughout this country and throughout the world. And it's got to stop. And, you know, thankfully, I mean, I believe it's somewhat God-given that, you know, that Bitcoin comes along, because it's, as von Mises said, you know, it's creeping up on them and they can't stop it. And you know, they want to stop it. They're going to try and stop it, but they're not going to succeed. And so you know, I'm extremely optimistic and hopeful that the system will be repaired by something that all we have to do is sit back and, you know, what we should do is push it as hard as we can, but really truly beyond that, it's kind of inevitable. You know, it's going to happen because the signal of Bitcoin is just so strong, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so as a result of that, it's going to destroy fiat currency, and fiat currency has enriched the few, you know, the quintillionaires at the top at the expense of the many. And now a lot of people can see it. I mean, I could see this 20 years ago, but I was just a crazy gold bug, you know, and now, you know, now Saifedean wrote his book, and I got 30-year-olds who are talking to me about Rothbard and von Mises, and I'm like, this is great, you know, because that generation is going to be the generation that's going to set it right. I mean, you know, these old guys are, you know, these old guys who've got control levers right now, they're going to be gone. You know, they're going to be gone. And you know, I know my kids and all the other millennials out there, they're not going to put up with this shit anymore, and they shouldn't. They don't have to. You know, they're going to burn the system down, and we're going to establish a new, fairer system. And we need it. We badly, badly need it. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but you know, you got me started, so I just figured I'd keep rolling.
And I did ask for your life story, so
yeah.
I'm really pleased. You know, what strikes me as I listen to you is how perfect you are for the role that you're in right now. In terms of spreading this message to the world, the background of and I've seen this a few times in the Bitcoin space, people who, for whatever reason, your combination of the religious upbringing that you had and the values that came out of that, the retail, seeing it from the real person, small business, small to mediums, probably a largish business end of things, to move through to see the decentralization of internet right from the beginning and the power of the internet and understanding there is no central office, head office of the internet. Each of these pieces for me, then that kind of the crisis of 2008, moving towards hard money, moving towards gold. So that need for kind of that bringing together of values, of sound money, of decentralization, of there's something else going on for me in this. Anyway, I've lost it. There was another idea that fed into it. And it's like everything in your life has been leading to this moment to help you not only be the person you are now, but to be the representative for Bitcoin that you are in many ways. You are one of the kind of leading voices in this space. And it's almost
you kind of say that. I think there are a lot of others who do a much better job than I do, but I do have to say it does, I do feel like I'm kind of enjoying my 15 minutes, and there were many, many years of wandering around in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, in 2015, when my gold portfolio was down massively, and I was out of shape and everything else, I was just like, I was pretty despondent, to be frank. And I just thought, well, you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I never, I kind of, again, it's the faith that allowed me to never really waver from the underlying belief that the thoughts I had were correct. And so I just kind of stuck with it. And and I think, the role maybe I play in the Bitcoin revolution is that, and people have criticized me for still hanging on to gold, there can only be one, and just, why get rid of this, why hang on to this inferior thing? And I'm like, well, hang on a second, gold got us here. Gold is less volatile. Gold's appropriate for certain people. And I view my role as actually helping gold bugs to understand Bitcoin, because they really generally understand the monetary issues. They're just afraid that Bitcoin is, Sam Bankman-Fried, and it's not. But, I've had a lot of people, a lot of gold people, their initial reaction, if you looked at crypto, you looked at how the people were pumping it and all the hoopla, it's easy to kind of go, oh, that's all bullshit. Now there was some real solid signal that, I know, Jeff knows, Greg knows, and it really, I always say it's a technological innovation, and that's the important thing. That's what helped me to see it. I mean, I recall all the FUD surrounding the internet too, and I thought, no, this is going to change the world. I mean, this is really going to change the world, and I feel like Bitcoin's the internet 2.0. I mean, all right, so we got decentralization. We hit peak centralization with World War II. In fact, it's ironic that I grew up in Detroit, which is kind of the headquarters of peak centralization, because World War II is the last fourth turning. We killed 50 million people in World War II. 50 million people. I mean, we got really good at centralized countries throwing their shit at each other, killing people. And and thankfully, the microchip came along, then the internet came along, and now Bitcoin has come along, and we're solidly heading in the decentralized direction. And my view is we can't get there fast enough, right? We've got to get there before one of these psychopaths hits the nuclear button, and destroys us all. And the good news is, I think, I'm an optimist. I think we will. I mean, some of my friends say, well, you're naive, and perhaps, but I think there's a certain amount of naivete or optimism that's important for all humans to carry, because otherwise, what's the point, right? And we have marched through all these centuries. We've made it this far, and our job, I think everyone's job, is just to try and advance things in the right direction as much as they can within their time frame, for their own kids. I mean, Greg, good friend of mine, Greg Foss, always says it's for the kids. I totally agree. I mean, the money is just like, it's like who cares? I want to see the right people win, and I want to see the wrong people lose. And we can go there if you like, because there are a lot of wrong people.
There's a lot of wrong people.
I know you agree with me on who some of them are. So, I'm happy to let loose.
So let me formulate a question around that, because I'm with you. 100%. And are they? You talked about the psychopaths. Are they evil? Are they psychopaths? Are they deluded? Are they simply a product of their system and their own upbringings? Are they caught in a trap that's a function of money printing since 1971 that they can't get out of?
All the above.
What's going on?
all the above, and I guess it depends on various people, various situations. I mean,
Yeah.
they certainly look. They're generally speaking very self-interested, and the ethos of the U.S. in my lifetime has been, the way you win here is you make the most money, right? The
Yeah.
way that's been I don't know what it's been in your country, but I think probably
Not
less
as
so.
strongly. Not as strongly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I grew up in an ethos of the American dream was you just get as rich as you possibly can, and
Yeah.
if you do that, you're winning. And I went to Harvard Business School, and I remember an old professor there said, something along the lines of, if you're not an honest business with an honest profit where everyone benefits is really what the model of businesses ought to be. Because you've got, it's a circle. There's a circle of life. You've got your customers, you don't want to screw them. You've got your employees, you don't want to screw them. You got your vendors, you don't want to screw them. I mean, isn't just a big scrum for money. And I think sadly, a lot of traditional values just kind of have gotten swept under the rug in the US scrum for money post World War II. And there were a lot of great tradition. I mean, if you kind of look at how the US became the leading country, I mean, our founding documents are really, to this day, I think, still absolutely fabulous, probably the best set of government documents ever written. Although it's funny, I was in Switzerland, I was with Egon von Greyerz, and I pointed that out to him. He's quite cynical, he's Swiss and German. And he said, I pointed that out to him, and he said in response, yeah, but you got to remember, like, yeah, those guys were great and they wrote those founding documents, but that was right before they committed genocide on the Indians. And I said, you got a point. I mean,
Yeah.
I admire Andrew Jackson greatly, and yet, not what he did to the Cherokee tribe. So, I mean, there's good and evil in all human beings, and at any point in time, we're always fighting against our lesser natures. But the fact of the matter is that the documents that set up this country and the principles upon which this country were built were very powerful and created a lot of progress and wealth, admittedly with a lot of problems, obviously the slave issue, etc. But they created more wealth for more people in less time than almost any other period in history that I can think of. And so the problem is that, like so many things, I mean, success led to complacency, and we somehow along the line we allowed a central bank to creep into the picture, and then which was kind of a mistake, and then we allowed post World War II, we made a lot of mistakes. We won the war, which was great, but we allowed the military industrial complex to get control of things, as Eisenhower warned us against, and then they murdered Kennedy, both Kennedys, and then things really started going the wrong way fast. And the banksters got control of the money, and slowly but surely they took down all the prohibitions against doing bad stuff, including Glass-Steagall, etc. And all the people who did that became fabulously wealthy as a result of playing these cycles of inflation and deflation. And the inflation and the deflation, every single one of those cycles hurt the common person, every single one of them.
Yeah.
And yet the wealthy people knew exactly how to play them, and that's how they became wealthier. And so, had there been sound money throughout this entire time frame, Ron Paul says that the 20th century was the century of total war. It was also a century of central banking and unsound money.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you have sound money, it's a lot harder to pay for war. No one wants to pay for it. And I don't want to kill any Chinese, but if the Chinese invade Taiwan, are they going to ask my sons to get involved? I mean, I sure hope not. And I mean, I look at, I mean, America murdered 3 million Vietnamese people, all because Henry Kissinger got a hard on. I mean, it's like, what the fuck? I mean, there are things that my country has done that I'm just, vastly ashamed of. I mean, I didn't do them, but I'm an American, and I as a contributor to our political system, I feel like I have to stand up and say when I see something that's wrong. I feel like it's incumbent upon me to say that it's wrong, even if that's uncomfortable to be said, and even if the powers that be don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And so and I think sadly, I think, not all Americans feel that way. A lot of people just kind of go along, and frankly, a lot of people are just struggling to put food on the table and raise their family. And I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
fortunately, I've been economically successful enough that I can think about other shit rather than
Yeah.
just put food on the table. But it feels to me like, given that success, it's incumbent upon me to try to advocate for policies and directions that would make, the world a better place for all parties involved.
So you said before that you think the next generation is going to burn it all down.
I do.
And I
Yeah.
want to, I have a slightly different view on that. I've got a couple of questions coming out on this because I see a lot of hyper woke in the next generation as well.
Oh yeah,
who
sure.
only care about climate, aren't interested in reading any actual facts about it. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be doing the right thing by the earth and the planet, of course, but I see some people in this space really getting it and going, but who wants to read Mises and Austrian economics when you could just virtue signal on Twitter and get all the likes?
Well, that's true. I mean, look, in every generation, there's good and bad, and I don't disagree that there are a lot of people who are not thinking critically. And that's somewhat of a risk. And there are people who have clearly socialist and Marxist views, among this generation, and I think that's problematic as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the thing that's the saddest about what's happened is that so many of those people are angry about capitalism. We don't really have capitalism. We
Yes.
have crony capitalism, and capitalism actually is fair and works quite well, when the table's not tilted. And so, it's funny. I mean, I look at a guy like Bernie Sanders, and I don't agree with him on many things, but on some of them I actually do agree. I mean, he understands how broken and how tilted the system is. I mean, look, I hope and I pray that what ultimately comes out of all this is a recognition by all people that the government, in my opinion, the back to first principles, the role of government, insofar as there is one, should be to establish rules and laws and fairness and enforce them through courts and police. And that's it. I mean, full stop. That's all. You just want to have a level playing field with a fair game for all parties involved. In the olden days, it used to be to defend your country against invading tribes. But I kind of think, I'm praying, hoping and praying that enough people have seen and read the history to understand just how painful and awful war is, that we're not going to go back to one of those invading tribe times. And we have these little proxy wars like Ukraine, not little, but we have proxy wars. But in a way, mutually assured destruction and the nuclear bomb has kind of, I think, informed everybody that if we go there, it's all over. And so I can foresee, I would imagine in my kids' and grandkids' lifetime, that there will be laws. Everyone will disarm, and there will be laws against building nuclear weapons. Anyone who tries to build a nuclear weapon will be put to death or put in jail for life. We'll just kind of eliminate them because they'll be that big a threat to humanity. And so, but you're right. I mean, there's, I mean, on the negative ledger of what's going on, if we get bad leadership, I mean, I never fully appreciated and understood, how could a guy take a country full of educated and intelligent people and convince them that the Jews were the problem and therefore they had to murder them all, a mass psychosis of Nazi Germany. I never really fully understood it until I watched what happened with COVID. and I watched the response, and it's like now I get it. And this is why leadership matters. It matters a lot, because without good leadership, you can be, mankind has proven that we can be taken down very bad paths. Again, though, I dream of a day where the monetary system as it now exists fails, and where the Bitcoin people and the sound money system are the richest people in the world. Because frankly, if I had to just pick people randomly to govern me, I want sound money and Bitcoin people running the government, because I know that they share the same values that I share. And so, again, perhaps being naive, I think that God has sent Bitcoin to us in an effort to wipe the slate clean and give us a restart. And I think that's what's going to happen. I really do. this is a fourth turning. We haven't talked about
Yeah.
this, you know
Yeah,
the
yeah.
model, but and they tend to last 20 years. This one started in 08. So, you know, I think there's going to be a big monetary event in the next 10 years. I really believe that. I think possibly sooner. And by
Yeah.
big monetary event, I mean like massive inflation or massive devaluation of currencies as we now know them. And I don't know what the response of the governments will be, but I think ultimately, you know, we'll probably try some wrong things before we come to the right one, which is to say we'll reset to a sound monetary standard. And while hyperinflation is a horrible thing to go through, as any country who's gone through it will tell you, the one thing I take comfort in, having read all the histories of these countries, is that once you reset to a sound money standard, things get better really quickly. So in other words, if you kind of look at, you know, and this is why in my Twitter byline I say fix the money, fix the world. If you kind of look at what's broken in the world today, I mean, you know, we've got red, blue over here. We got all kinds of people screaming at each other, doing all this woke bullshit, and that's, you know, they're all arguing over deck chairs on the Titanic. What they don't realize is that the iceberg is the money, you know, and the money is broken. And so once we fix the money, I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised with how self-organized it all becomes, you know, and how when young people have a future and they know that they can earn a fair wage and that they can therefore afford to buy a house because housing prices are getting jammed up by BlackRock, who can buy houses cheap because they have 0% cost of capital. I mean, when it all becomes fair, they're not going to be arguing over wokeness or genders or any of that crap. It's everyone's just going to get to work and go, oh yeah, I get it. Okay, you know, if I do my job and do this, my life is going to be really good. All of this complaining and bitching and distractions and arguing and fighting that we see going on, it's all because people feel like they have no way out. They have no hope. And so they're arguing and fighting about the wrong shit. And what they got to do is they got to go back to the core principle and say, if we build sound money, it's as Jeff Booth says, you know, you can't fix a broken system from within that broken system. You got to throw the broken system out and come back with a sound new system that is correct, that actually models the way the world should work. And the Keynesians basically broke the world. I mean, Lord Keynes was a really evil guy. I mean, not only was he a pedophile, but he was just an arrogant, stupid fuck. I mean, he was actually highly intelligent, but he was stupid in the sense that what he wanted to do was, you know, feather his own nest in terms of government power. And there's nothing that gives governments more power than the Keynesian philosophy of growth at any cost, because the governments control the money and they control the situation, they control the economics. And, you know, if we go back to sound money, the government power just shrinks way, 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 way down, because, you know, people will say, hey, we're not giving you that power to play with the currency anymore. You know, we've got it. We can save for our future. So
do you think people get it? Do you think Jamie Dimon is as clueless as he appears to be?
Oh yeah,
about Bitcoin?
yeah. No, he's clueless. I mean, look, he's a quintillionaire. He benefits. I mean, he became a billionaire by getting his stock options reset at the bottom of 2008 when he absolutely knew the government was going to bail him out. And you know, they gave him an enormous set of stock options in JP Morgan. And, you know, then a year later, JP Morgan was paying record bonuses. I mean, this is the way they do it, Carrie. They, you know, they take care of their own. And, you know, I mean, he hates Bitcoin because he realizes what it is. It's honest. It's an honest system, as opposed to, he wants blockchain. He wants blockchain that they can control. I mean, the notion, you know, the people who hate Bitcoin
like wanting internet that they can control, which they just about do. Yeah.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. They don't like the internet either.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, they don't even like, you know, certain broadcasters. I mean, you know, you just saw Tucker Carlson, who was speaking some truth, get thrown out. And you know, it's probably only a matter of time till they try and silence Joe Rogan and others. But the good news is that there are workarounds to all of this, and they are losing. I mean, in my view, they are losing. But sadly, it's not fast enough for my taste. I mean, I'd like to see them lose tomorrow. They deserve to lose tomorrow, right? And you know, they will. Yeah.
Except that it's going to be a painful process for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you know, but
breaking down.
People say it's going to be painful, but you know, is it any more painful than right now? I mean, you see suicides, you see drug deaths, you see. I mean, have you seen the pictures of some of the American cities? I mean, you've seen what San Francisco looks like today. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this is not the country I grew up in. I mean, this just is not, and it's just grossly unfair. It really is. And you know, you know, people, a lot of people here live lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
And what they should realize is that there's an exit path, and that is to you know, save in terms of sound money and then advocate for sound money. And we will, you know, that's, if you want to drain the swamp, that's how you do it. You know, you don't vote for Orange Man, you know.
Yeah, indeed. And it's very much a ground up thing. I mean, this is the thing. It cannot happen top down. As you just quoted,
No.
Ruth, the system is not going to fix itself from within the
No.
system. Nobody within the system, nobody who's benefiting from the system is going to even want to try. They can't even talk about this stuff because in a world that supports 7-second sound grabs,
Right.
in mainstream media, they can't start to have a conversation about sound money. Nobody's willing to, or very few people are willing to kind of really explore that and take it on board. So it's got to be a ground up. It's got to be a ground up movement.
That's
and it's
right.
got to be a parallel movement to begin with, a parallel system.
That's exactly right.
That gains traction quietly beneath the surface.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
and that's what's going on. I mean, that's what's happening. And like I say, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's gonna, you know, I mean, I think on the bright side, I see it happening, you know, within 5 years. I mean, we're making a lot of progress here. Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna have complete fiat collapse within 5 years, but I'll bet that I think the next 5 years are gonna be really, really meaningful and important. I mean, look, it's happening daily here in the United States. I mean, First Republic Bank, what was it down today? I mean, you know, these things are just, you know, these things are getting killed. And you know, Janet Yellen says the bank, right? Yeah, First Republic Bank was down another 30% today. So, right, and you know, they're having a hard time sticking their fingers in all the holes in the dam, and they keep springing leaks. And you know, all it really takes for our side to win is for more and more people to come to believe that the other side is just corrupt and untrustworthy. And literally by the day, you see more and more signs of that. And I mean, you take a poll in the United States, how many of you trust the government? I mean, it's like 10%. I mean, it's like nobody does. So how do we have a representative democracy where 90% of the population doesn't trust it? I mean, this is tinder for a revolution, and you know, and it's coming. I mean, you can just feel that it's coming. And I think hopefully the better nature of this younger crowd, you know, the Marty Bents and the Jack Mahlers of the world will, you know, will rise above, you know, kind of the social justice warriors, the AOCs. And you know, and I think that they will be listened to, and you know, it'll be a better world. It will be. I can see it coming. I'm very hopeful about it all, in spite of the fact that it's quite annoying having to deal with these people on the other side. But as Preston says, so many great lines. He says, "This is really fun because they just make it so easy for us." You know, they're so fucking stupid, and they say such ridiculous shit that it's just like, you know, it's like playing tennis with a 6-year-old. You know, I mean, you can just, you know, you're serving to them, and you just know they can't get it because they're fucking awful. You know, and I mean, and that really is true. I mean, you know, they're making unforced errors. I mean, Janet Yellen was on CBS Meet the Press, like right before when Silicon Valley Bank failed. She was on the Sunday morning show. She says, Dodd-Frank provides that we are not going to bail out the banks. 6 hours later, they bailed out the banks. She said it's not a bailout, which of course is a lie. Right? I mean, you know, and then I mean, then with Credit Suisse, a week later, Credit Suisse is failing, and on Sunday night, every single central bank in the world comes out and says unlimited swap lines. You know, and I mean, you got guys like Neil Kashkari. You've seen this on Twitter. I love this quote. It said, the Federal Reserve has an unlimited amount of money, an unlimited amount of cash, right? Yeah, right? Yeah. Go figure. Yeah, your mind wants to explode, right? And so, you know, they're making it easy for us. I mean, having said that, you know, it like I say, you know, because I mean, I wish I were 30, because then I'd get to see it all play out, and I'd live nicely on the other side of it. I mean, at 65, you know, I recognize that, you know, I'd like it to play out sooner rather than later, because I don't want my kids to be living in this dystopian world that we're in right now. I know that once we get to the other side, it will be a better situation. So
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I love your hopefulness. And I think it's lazy to be cynical and pessimistic because it's easy, you know.
Well, yeah, it's
And
what it arguably psychologists actually say it's more realistic,
oh,
to be
it
honest with you.
is.
It
And
actually
because
isn't. Yeah,
and safer, because if you see the stick
right.
and you're scared it's a snake, it's safer to assume it might be a snake,
That's
you
right.
know, of
That's
course.
right. But fuck that shit. I mean, let's live. I mean, let's live. Let's have fun. Let's. I mean, I view this is a battle. This is a spiritual war with a bunch of evil people. And this, by the way, this war has been played out for thousands of years. I mean, just read history, and
Yeah.
you'll see. I mean, this is, I mean, Bitcoiners have strains of William Wallace flowing through their blood. I mean, they
Oh,
really do. Do you know what I
100%.
mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
just
yeah.
completely like, I don't care. Draw and quarter me. I don't give a shit. I mean, Matt Odell, you think he gives a shit what the fucking government says or does to him? He couldn't give two fucking rats asses. I mean, and I mean, and I think most Bitcoiners feel that way, you
Yeah.
know? So
Look, as Mala says, it's the hill I'll die on, and I'm with him, you know. Uh,
yeah.
and on that Malice thing, and speaking of culture wars and all of this rubbish, the I saw this great meme the other day, and it just compared. We had on one side Greta Thunberg with all her rah rah and noise and carry on and PR team,
Yeah.
and then on the other side there was this guy, a little older but not far off, who has who has worked with some microbe that eats plastic.
Huh.
Right? So it's a live thing. So this man is quietly unheard of. Nobody knows his name, and he's building stuff and he's creating stuff and he's
How great is
inventing stuff
that?
that changes the world. And this is the
Yeah.
difference. You can have AOC with all her noise and rah-rah, and Mellors, meanwhile, is building out,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
Lightning Network, and you've got these quiet builders, and it's quiet for the moment, and then suddenly the internet is everywhere, and you go, where did this come from?
Right.
And
Well,
it's taken over the
that's the
world.
thing. And that's how, what I caution people and say is, we haven't seen, I mean, this is a big fourth turning, and it's a big social change. We haven't seen one of these with the technology that we've got today, right? In
Yeah.
other words, right. So think of Silicon Valley Bank. Statistics that blew my mind. $42 billion exited that bank in one day. I mean, holy crap, that's a lot of money. And 100 billion, I was told 100 billion were called for the next day. Total deposits were only $200 billion. I mean,
Yep.
this to Hemingway's, I went bankrupt slowly, then all at once. I
Yep.
mean, when this really gets rolling, I mean, when the tipping point gets hit, right? Oh my God, these fiat currencies are actually worthless. They are totally and completely worthless. I have got to get out of these as fast as I possibly can. When that tipping point gets hit, look out, because the exits are going to be extremely crowded. And, Bitcoin's going to be on its way from 2 million to 10 million, and gold will be at 10,000 going to 20,000. I mean, it's, there will not be enough of this sound money alternative stuff. And we're such early days. I mean, Bitcoin's what, $500 billion of value today? I mean, there's $35 trillion of US stock market value. 35 trillion against 500 billion. I mean, and there's probably 400 trillion of fiat assets in the world. And there's probably 3 or 4 trillion of tradable gold and 500 billion of tradable Bitcoin. I mean, what happens when all of those fiat assets, all of those bonds, all of those stocks, when all those people say, hey, you know what, this inflation's eating me alive, I need to own sound stuff. I mean, it's going to come chasing our stuff, and they're not going to be more than 21 million. I mean, the gold grows, but only at 1.7% a year. So, I mean, it's going to get crowded. And so, and at that point in time, their currency will have failed. It will be, the US will be like Venezuela or like Weimar Germany. And I sincerely, I mean, people think I'm extreme when I say that, but frankly, just doing the analysis, it's really the only logical conclusion one can come to. I mean, Preston comes to the same conclusion. He's an engineer. He comes at it from an engineering point of view. And we share notes on this. We completely agree on this thought. I mean, it's, how else where else can it go? I mean, it's literally, when you see the second derivative starting to go straight up. I mean, there's a great chart on Twitter. People, the US interest expense, right? US federal
Yeah.
government interest expense. That thing is heading straight up. Yeah.
Yep.
And they're raising rates, so it's only going to get worse. And the
Yeah.
debt is getting larger. And I mean, this is James Lavish. This is the death cycle. This is a debt trap, and
Yep.
you can't get out of this. I mean, you just can't. And the end point is, either you let the entire economy collapse because you have not printed enough money, and everybody is massively going bankruptcy, and that's what happened in the 30s through 39, or you print to address it, but the print has to be so large that everyone loses confidence in your ability to control it, which they've already started to do.
Yeah.
I mean, and so the Fed balance sheet goes to 25 trillion, then it goes to 50, then it goes to 100. Gasoline's $100 a gallon, and I mean, and pretty soon, the economy just plain doesn't function because the money is so hopelessly broken that nobody can price anything. I mean, I think right now all prices are wrong, and the reason is they broke the money. They fundamentally broke the money. When they set interest rates at 0 from 09 to 2015, that was a crime. It was an absolute crime against the monetary system. That kicked it off. And so everybody thought that would continue. They got totally levered up. And now they're trying to reverse it. And then COVID came along and they printed more money than they'd ever printed. And now they're trying to reverse that. Now they're trying to slam on the brakes. And they're going to crash this car. I mean, this car is going to crash.
And I think perhaps one of their Achilles heels is that they underestimate the general public. I saw what happened. I was in the supermarket at one stage when we were doing the queues, when there were the shortages of toilet paper and all of that stuff. Yeah. And so there were long queues, and I'm chatting with the guy next to me, and we're both scrolling through our phones to buy the time. And I'm like, "What are you reading?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm reading about gold. I want to invest in gold." This was this was 2020, right. And hopefully next time round, that's going to be gold and Bitcoin. So if we had, and also, I also saw it at the protests here in Melbourne, the understanding of what was going on, the exposure of mainstream media not telling the truth, being mouthpieces, being propaganda for the government, not exposing. And you've got Joe Rogan, who's got 11 million followers, subscribers, listening to his programs, hearing the decentralization, as you said, is our saving grace. Yes. And it can't be controlled, and people are more with it than the government gives them credit for. I have conversations with my hairdresser which are smarter than the conversations I have with some corporate folk I work with,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I interact with a lot of kind of blue collar people in my town and the gym I work out at and so forth. And these people get it. I mean, they're stacking silver. Everyone knows the government's lying. Everyone knows the government's totally full of shit. I mean, that's like common knowledge. Yeah. I mean, and so you see like somebody like RFK comes along, and he's a flawed person, but he's saying the right kinds of things, and the kinds of things that the powers that be don't want him to say. And we just saw that Biden has said there aren't going to be any debates. Biden's the candidates. That's that. I mean, they're right. I mean, what's that all about? So people are slowly but surely waking up to how broken it is everywhere.
Yeah,
I think.
One of the really damning pieces for me was Caitlin Long, Custodia Bank.
Oh yeah, I'm an investor in that.
Yeah. Oh, are you?
Yeah. We're investors in her company. I've known Caitlin a long time. She's fabulous. Yeah, no, I mean, this smart operator.
But she applied for a full reserve bank.
Absolutely.
And I know there's one other business that's tried to do that too, and they've been banned for something like 5 years from ever applying for applying again. Like, what is wrong with these people?
Well, again, I mean, the behind the scenes on that, as I understand it, is that Jamie Powell was in Jamie Dimon was in Chairman Powell's ear. Right. And they basically shut that down. I mean, look, I mean,
because
it's
too
amazing.
Many people
she doesn't even have a bank. She doesn't even have a bank. She doesn't really even have a business going yet. And yet the people who run the system are smart enough to realize what an existential threat she is to their game. And that's why they denied her that license. I mean, it's stunning. Yeah. It's absolutely stunning.
It
But
really is.
the lines are getting very clearly drawn, and it's only a matter of time until our side is big enough and loud enough, and their side is we're going to trample them. I mean, we're just going
Yeah.
to trample them. So, I mean, I love the meme that they're out standing on a plank and we're all standing on the other end of the plank. All we got to do is step off, and they fall. I mean, the elites
Yes.
have all the power, they have a lot of the money, and they control a lot of the politics and the mouth and the messaging through the media. But the rest of us, there are a lot more of us, and the internet, and the decentralization and the communications that we've got now. I mean, look at this video chat we're doing. This message can go out to tons and tons of people, and more, the scales are falling away from people's eyes, and they're coming to the conclusion, this is intolerable. This is absolutely, completely, and totally intolerable. And things are happening that these elites cannot control. I'm sure they don't like, this kind of stuff happening. But it is, and it's, they better wake up and smell the coffee, because it's going to happen a lot more. I mean, they hold a losing set of cards.
Yeah. So for the average person wanting to take something useful away from this in terms of how do I invest? Is it gold? Is it Bitcoin? Is it both?
Well,
Is it, yeah.
everyone's situation is different. I mean, and I'm not supposed to legally give investment advice, but I sincerely believe that saving in fiat terms is crazy, because they're going to debase it. We know that. So bonds probably are the worst investment on the planet.
Yeah.
Unless they're incredibly short duration, like 3 months, 6 months, whatever. I mean, they're not paying you 4 or 5% for those. But beyond that, you want something that the government can't print, and you want something that the government's not going to tax heavily. Now, they're going to probably try to tax everything, but real estate kind of qualifies in the sense that you can't move it very easily, and they can tax it, but at least they can't print it. And in terms of financial assets, the three really that stand above and beyond all the others are the money that doesn't have counterparty risk, and that would be Bitcoin number one, gold and silver number 2 and 3. But they can't be printed. They're limited in supply. They've been money in the case of gold and silver for 5,000 years, case of Bitcoin for 14 going on 15 years. And to me, these are the most asymmetric bets ever. And I think, I think 10 years from now, people are going to be saying, you own a full coin? What, are you kidding me? How the hell did you get a full coin? Right? I mean, because a full coin is going to be worth $1 million. Right. And so, for $30,000 today, you can buy $1 million full coin, and it will be $1 million plus in 10 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
And so, to me, this is a no-brainer asymmetric trade. And I try and convince all my clients that the only wrong allocation of Bitcoin is zero. Obviously it goes up and down. And, I've had clients who bought it at 68,000, watched it go to 15, and they call and they complain. And I say, well, you didn't do what I told you to do, right? Which is to, dollar cost average.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a partner with Swan, and we support Swan in a big way, and they do a great job. And, I just, every week I buy Bitcoin. I probably should do it every day, but I just, whatever. But I've got it set up. It just auto debits my bank account every week. I buy more Bitcoin. So I bought it at 68. I bought it at 16. I'm buying it at 28 or 29, whatever it is right now. And I think that, you save in terms of a money that will hold its value or appreciate in value on a relative basis. And in my opinion, there's no doubt that that's what will happen to this form of money. And so, and that's why I also think that, ultimately Bitcoiners will have a ton of power, because if you really think about all of that money that's fiat squeezing into this small 21 million coin asset base, these coins, I mean, they're going to 10 million a pop. I mean, so, imagine what your life is going to look like when, and now admittedly gasoline might be $100, but the point is, imagine what your life is going to look like when your savings have appreciated as much as we're talking about here. Gold is going to work too, but not to the same degree. And the reason for that is that gold's widely distributed right now. I mean, Bitcoin's got two things going on for it. It's a sound money. It's digital sound money. Gold's analog sound money. But Bitcoin is also on an adoption curve. So Bitcoin's like the internet in 1995, right? Or 6 or 7. And you just, not everyone knows what it is. Not everyone's involved. But guess what? They're going to know. And they're going to get involved. When it goes to 100 grand again, you watch. I mean, I think, like Max is right. We're probably going to go to 200 on the next run, and then we'll probably correct back to 40, because that's the pattern. It tends to do a 5x up and then correct 60 or 70%. We'll do another 5x, and the 40 will go up to, I don't know, 800, something like that, and we'll correct again. And I mean, as Jeff says, in Bitcoin terms, the price of everything will be going down in Bitcoin terms forever. And I strongly believe that. And so, you can decide to get involved now, or you can wait until you have to pay more for it. But, I don't see a sounder currency on a stock to flow basis.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it's really quite simple. I mean, I say this compared to stocks. So many of us have been reduced to trying to pick stocks to protect our purchasing power. The beautiful thing about Bitcoin is there's no management team. I mean, it's just a protocol. It's just a mathematical protocol. I mean, you've got some core developers, but in essence, the thing's not going to change because everyone's agreed that to do so would be dangerous. And so as a result, it's just going to continue forming a block every 10 minutes, and they're going to get more and more valuable. So to me, it's like, you could be an artist, you could be, a singer, you could be anything. And you got one simple investment decision: saving in Bitcoin. And, your kids and grandkids will thank you. That's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah.
So
and it's not, you're right. It's not just for the kids, as Foss would say, it's for the grandkids, it's for the great grandkids.
Oh, absolutely. There'll be
head's at.
multi-generational wealth as a result of this. And of course, some people will be claiming that's unfair. And, and look, there's going to be countermeasures. I mean, don't kid yourself. I mean, I think they're going to probably something today where they were talking about, excuse me.
Do you need some water? Please grab some water.
No, I'm good. Making people report their, their holdings.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility they're going to try and heavily tax it. But, look, if you really think big picture, I think nation states, big, powerful nation states, are going to lose a lot of their power. And there's just decentralization as a trend. In my opinion, it's going to go on for years.
Yeah.
Why do we need?
It's one of those. Mark Moss talks about it as one of those macro cycles.
It really is.
Centralization to decentralization.
I mean, why do we really need big governments? I mean, what was the point? I mean, I get it. We had it, and because we had madmen get control of them. It was good. We had good people who were willing to fight the madmen. But I guess the point is, why can't we just get into much smaller, more decentralized government structure?
Yeah.
Throughout the world.
I've just written an article actually that Looking Glass Education have just uploaded on Bitcoin and libertarianism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
about small government.
Looking Glass is fabulous. I mean, Greg has done so many great things for this space. He really is a fabulous ambassador, and the fact that he puts his own time and money into Looking Glass to educate people is just, he's a credit. He's a credit to all Bitcoiners. So. Look,
and that's true. I mean, the generosity I was saying before to you about the folk who have lent their time so generously to this program, and I'm nobody and nobody's heard of me. And Jeff Booth reached out to me. I didn't even try to reach out to him.
Wow,
he just saw that I was following him and said, and he goes, sorry, I haven't been in contact.
Yeah, right.
I didn't.
No, I know. No, I mean, I know. I mean, he and I've been on trips with these guys.
Amazing.
He and Greg will fly to the ends of the earth to talk about Bitcoin, and I try to do the same. I mean, and again, it's just because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yes.
And we're all going to leave a legacy, and I'd like my legacy to be, that guy fought for sound money, which was, I mean, it was, we were on the right side of this whole thing. I mean, a comparable situation in America. I mean, it's not widely known around the world. Well, it is somewhat, but it was the American Revolution. I mean, there were a lot of people in America who were loyalists, right? Who sided with the British, and yet there was a very small, hardcore group of pissed off Americans who just said, no, we're not going to take this shit. We're going to fight back. And we know they're the biggest, most powerful country in the world. And we know they've got a navy and wealth is blah, 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 blah. We don't give a shit. We're still going to fight them. And to me, because what these documents that we've drafted here, these are right. Well, at the time they just had the declaration, but it was the fundamental, case. And I think that's kind of, it's perhaps a bit hyperbolic, but not entirely. I mean, I think that's kind of what the Bitcoiners are saying is that, look, we know that this Keynesian financial model that you guys have built to benefit yourself, we know this is wrong, and we know that it's unfair. It's very clear. The evidence is black and white, clear cut. And as a result of it, we've created this alternative system based on math and absolute truth and fairness. And, we're going to push it, and we're going to advocate for it. And guess what? the world is going to adopt this system and they're going to throw your system out. And, you know, and that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's, it's great. It's just absolutely great.
It's great. And it's
it is,
inspiring.
I mean, it's so hopeful. I mean, it's why when you're with Bitcoiners, I mean, yeah, you know, look, these people piss us off, but in general, we're positive, optimistic, and hopeful because there is a way out. And I've spoken to many people who are like, I was so depressed until I saw Bitcoin. And by the way, you know, I see it in gold too. I mean, you know, the gold people have been fighting this battle for 30 years, unsuccessfully, by the way, because they've managed to suppress the price of gold.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a gold bug, I can honestly say when the Bitcoiners came along, I was like, hey, this is great. Reinforcements. I mean, we got really good reinforcements. And Safe wrote that book, and we got 30-year-olds quoting von Mises. And, you know, I mean, we got a bunch of pissed off people carrying spears. We're going to run up and take that castle. You know, I mean, we were trying to take that castle as gold guys, but, you know, frankly, we were getting kind of tired. And, you know, and I go to gold conferences, a bunch of old, tired, pissed off people.
Yeah.
You know, I go to Bitcoin conferences, I got all these young, fired up, you know, we're going to win kind of people. It's great. You know, I love it. No, really, I love it. It's like new energy. It's like I got a second lease on life, you know? So, and we're all fighting the same fight. You know, we are all fighting the same fight. And I'm happy to see most Bitcoiners have come to the point where they grudgingly at least respect gold people, understand that, you know, we were the OGs of sound money. You know, it was all we had until Bitcoin came along. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of which, am I going to see you at the Miami? Am I going to see you?
I'll be at Miami. Are you going to be there? Yeah,
I'm going to be there. I'm flying in from Melbourne.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. That's fantastic. And as I understand it, there's something going on in Australia in April of 2024.
You coming?
Foss, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking very seriously. Foss said he might go, and if Foss goes, I'll probably go.
Great. So, do it. Please do it. Bitcoin Alive.
Yeah.
We've just had the first one here in Sydney only 3 weeks ago. It rocked. It was so awesome. It was, you know what it was? It was like Miami, except many of the speakers you haven't heard before.
Sure.
And there's some really genuinely, not only, I think Australia is actually punching above its weight in terms of
I believe
the Bitcoin community.
On Twitter, I see it. There's great Australian representation on Twitter. I love it. Love it.
Really and truly. And there was some awesome knowledge and insight coming from the stage, and some interesting and different angles that I don't hear commonly. I would really recommend it, and it would be awesome
I'll try.
to have you there. Yeah.
Hey, Carrie, I'm getting the hook.
We've got I was looking towards
20. I'm sorry, I gotta wrap, but we'll do it again, and I'll look forward to meeting you in Miami.
I will absolutely love that. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Larry.
It's an honor to be with you. Take care. See you.
Be well.
Bye.
Ciao.